Hey, welcome back to my channel where I post videos about my own experience as a late diagnosed autistic human being. I'm wearing sunglasses today because my sensory issues have been more intense than usual lately. So I've been wearing sunglasses, I've been wearing loops and headphones more than usual. I just went outside in the sun to get something sorted on the terrace, and I was out for just a few minutes and that was enough to fuck up my eyes, and so now I'm gonna pay the consequences for a few hours. That's great. I basically want to make this video because I want to talk about what happened yesterday, because yesterday was a pretty, how should I put it, intense day for me. It might not sound like much to someone else. It might not sound like much happened yesterday, but for me it was very intense. Yeah, so I thought I would share it in case it is relatable to anyone. And just because honestly I like to document my life on this channel. If I'm not doing it for anyone else, at least I'm doing it for me. Yesterday I had a dentist appointment. This appointment had been booked for 4 months. Since January. I knew that I had this appointment on May 15th. That's because last year I had a dentist appointment in May, and I've been meaning to keep it an annual thing of like going once a year to get my teeth checked. We moved here 8 months ago from England, so this was a new dentist that I had never been to. Meeting new people, going to new unfamiliar places. As an autistic person with anxiety, it's just not the best experience. So I had been dreading it and thinking about it increasingly as time went by and as the appointment got closer. So I had been preparing mentally for it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna bring all these things, and then I'm gonna reward myself because there's the Eurovision final tomorrow. So I was like, that's perfect, that's just 2 days after my appointment. It will be my reward and I'll feel so satisfied about having gone to the dentist and blah blah blah. My appointment was at 20 to 2 in the afternoon, so 14:40. So it's a good time. I don't like to go too early in the morning, especially with burnout. I've been struggling to get up early in the morning. I don't like to go too late either, because then you've got the whole day of like building up to it, dreading it. So somewhere in the middle of the day is the best time for me. I got up as usual around 10. No, actually that's not true. I got up closer to 9. And I was like, I can sleep another hour until my alarm goes off. But then I was like, I think I'd rather get up now, having woken up naturally, than wait for my alarm to go off, because waking up with an alarm is a lot more stressful for my body than waking up naturally, even if it's a bit earlier, because waking up with an alarm is so brutal that it can make me groggy for a long time. Struggle to fully wake up. So I got up around 9, got ready and my partner was feeling sick. Because we had McDonald's the night before. We've been eating a lot of takeout lately because we haven't had the spoons to cook or clean the kitchen a lot of the time, to be honest. It was probably not the best option to get McDonald's the night before, especially for my partner who has IBS and tends to not digest it very well, but we did it anyway. And at first he was fine. Last night he was like, yeah, I'm digesting it well this time, blah blah blah. And then in the morning he was like, I'm feeling nauseous. So I started considering the possibility that I might have to go to the dentist on my own, which I've made videos about my support needs in the past, but it's very, 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 very difficult and often downright impossible for me to go places on my own, go to appointments on my own. I have done it, I can do it, but a lot of the time either the anxiety beforehand is too much and I end up canceling the thing, or I will go to the thing and it will be such a disaster, such an immensely stressful experience that it's difficult for me to recover from it or whatever. And very rarely it will go well and it will give me a sense of satisfaction that, yeah, I can do things on my own independently. But it happens so rarely that it's just not the norm for me. So at first I was like, okay, well, if you can't come with me, then I'm gonna have to cancel the appointment or like move the appointment because I can't see myself going on my own right now. I had prepared myself mentally to go with my partner, which is what I usually do. And after a while I was like, actually, I think it would be wise for me to move the appointment because I've been hiking myself up. I've been preparing myself mentally so much for it to be today that I'd just rather get it over with than having to do the whole process over, I don't know, in a week or 2 weeks, especially because I didn't know when the next appointment would be. So I was like, you know what, I'd rather just go even if I'm on my own than move the appointment. But I was really dreading it, but at the same time I didn't want to put pressure on my partner who was already struggling physically. So I was like trying to balance, I hope you can feel better by then and be able to come, and like wanting my partner to not have pressure on him. It was a whole thing. In the end, he felt good enough to come with me, and so that was a huge relief. Because also, I guess not just the appointment itself, but like I have to take an Uber to get there, or a taxi or whatever, because it's like a half-hour walk, and it's a lot of going uphill and stuff like that, and that would just absolutely destroy me. So I have to take an Uber and that kind of thing. And so the idea of taking an Uber on my own terrifies me. The idea of being alone in a car with a stranger, it's not so much like that I'm scared about my personal safety, because I don't think anything bad's gonna happen. It's just my social anxiety. It's just horrible. Just the idea of having to talk to the person and what I'm gonna say to them and all that stuff, and having to order an Uber back home on my phone, not knowing if I can handle it. Just having to handle these things on my own is terrifying. So yeah, I was very relieved that my partner could come with me in the end, and very grateful to him, because I know that he forced himself to some extent. He would have much preferred to stay at home, but he knew how overwhelming it was for me, so I was very grateful. And I expressed my gratitude on multiple occasions. So we take an Uber to go there. I always make sure that I'm not late for the appointment, but I don't arrive too early either, because where I get the most anxiety, like where I get a spike in my anxiety, is in the waiting room when I'm waiting for an appointment of some sort. Just those few minutes before the appointment is where I feel the most sick, where I feel like I'm gonna faint. I feel like at the absolute worst. So I try and calculate things so that I arrive with like just 5 to 10 minutes to spare, you know? And that's what happened. So we get to the dentist office. It's basically like a center. It's like a dentist center, if you will. In a big building and stuff. We go in and like so many smells. You know how certain public places will use like some types of perfumes or like artificial smells to cover up for like not so pleasant smells, like in, you know, health settings and stuff like that. And so that was the first thing I noticed as I came in, was like, whew, my nose felt attacked. And same thing in the Uber. Every time we take an Uber, for some reason their cars always smell so strongly of cologne or perfume of some kind, and it's like so freaking strong that I'm like, how are you not bothered by this? I don't know. So every time I get in the Uber, the smell is so powerful and I get instantly nauseous, because I don't do well with like most perfumes and like artificial smells, chemical smells, that kind of stuff. And that was something I realized recently. I was like, I never realized how much when I go out and about, when I leave the house, when I go into town, I'm always bombarded with sensory stimuli in general, but I feel like lately I've realized how much of it is olfactory, like people's smells, people's perfumes, places that have perfumes, the smell of fuel in cars, and the smell of just all the different smells in the city when you're around other people, when you're in public spaces. It's just overwhelming, the amount of olfactory information that your brain has to process. And I never realized how much it contributes to sensory overload, but it really does. It makes me realize how much public spaces are not sensory friendly at all, even when it comes to smell, you know, because a lot of the time you hear about lights and sounds, but like smells, if you're sensitive to smells, it can be overwhelming. That also highlighted how scent free my house is. Even when I do use like products that have a bit of a chemical scent to them, I let them sit for a few minutes and like wait for the smell to go away so that I can go in and clean, because the scent is too overwhelming. And I don't wear perfume. My partner almost never wear perfumes either. And all the products that we use, like personal hygiene products and stuff like that, have smells that don't bother us. So when I go out of the house, I'm like, that's when I realize how scent-free and like scent-friendly my house is compared to the rest of the world. From the moment I left the house, I had my loops in, and on top of that, because I don't have noise cancelling headphones, like active noise cancelling, when I want to have the noise cancelling and listen to something at the same time, I will put in my loops, and on top of that, I'll wear my usual headphones, and I'll be listening to, most of the time, ASMR, because it's one of the things that regulate me the most and help me keep calm the most. So I had that going on for the whole like Uber ride, and as I got to the dentist office, same thing. So I kept my sunglasses on, I kept my headphones on. You know, I always look kind of like a little strange to people because their first impression, especially since I have a pretty flat affect, and I don't speak very loud, especially when I'm wearing my loops. My partner always tells me that he can't hear me because I think I'm talking loud enough, but I'm not. So I must look really strange to people. It's not something I care about as much now. I've grown a lot in confidence, especially when it comes to accommodating my needs. It's become a lot more important to me that I accommodate my needs than looking normal or passing as neurotypical, whatever. Through discovering my autism and accommodating my needs and stuff like that, I've actually gained a lot of confidence and like not caring as much what people think. I used to really like monitor what I say when I know that someone can hear me, like a stranger or a neighbor or someone on the street. Like when it's not just me and my partner in a closed private space, I would always monitor what I'm saying because of my fear of judgment and also the way I look and everything, the way I'm perceived in general. Anytime I feel perceived, I would always like adjust the way I look, the way I sound, as a form of masking, you could say. And I don't do that nearly as much. Now I'm more in like a thing of like, yeah, that's who I am, just deal with it. If you're not happy with it, that's not my problem. Like I can now really feel it now and embrace it compared to before, so that's great. And so I get into the office, I talk to the reception, and she's like asking for my health insurance card Vital, if you know, in France, it's those green cards. And then she hands me a form to fill out, and it's just whenever I'm in these situations, I'm very autistic, okay? I am completely overwhelmed. My brain is not braining. I have to focus so hard on what people are telling me. Also because of like auditory processing differences. I'm in such a state of stress that like she handed me the form. I didn't even realize for the first few minutes. And while she was doing stuff on her computer, I registered it. I was like, oh, should I fill in the form now? And she was like, yes. So I started filling it out. you know, it asks things like your name, your age. Something I didn't understand was like it asks for your date of birth and then your age, and I was like, can't you deduce my age from my date of birth? Like, what is this? And stuff like that, your address. And when I'm in those moments, I'm so messy and all over the place because I have my bag, I have my stuff that I need to get out to take out for the appointment, like my card. I'm trying to fill out the form. I've got my phone, I've got a fidget usually, so I'll be struggling with all these things, trying to put them back where they belong, and just having all these stuff in my hands and like trying to fill the form at the same time. It's just a whole mess. And then she's like, go to the waiting room and you can finish filling it out there. Also, I had never had to do that anywhere when I went to the dentist. That was the first time I had to fill out the form. So that was something new to deal with. And so I'm like, what about my card? And she was like, I'll give it to you at the end. So that was something else that I like wasn't used to. So I go to the waiting room, and the waiting room is just basically a bench along the hallway next to the reception. It's not a separate room like how I'm used to. So we sit down on the bench and I'm trying my best to fill out the form while like dealing with all my stuff. And my partner can see that I'm super stressed and my hand is shaking and I'm all over the place. And then a dentist comes out and calls my name. So I was like, great, I didn't have to wait that long. So I go in for my appointment and I'm like, this was probably the most autistic coded dentist appointment of my entire life, because I go in, I'm still wearing my sunglasses and my headphones and my loops, and I've got all these things in my hand that I don't know what to do with. I'm clumsy and all that stuff. First thing I say is like, I didn't have time to finish filling the form. So he's like, that's okay. He takes it from me and he's like, we can fill it out together. I'll ask you some questions. And it's basically like, do you smoke? Do you have allergies? Do you have health issues? That kind of stuff. When was your last dentist appointment? What did the dentist do? So I was like, my last appointment was in England and stuff. This whole time I'm like taking my glasses off, taking my headphones off and trying to juggle everything in my hands and putting them back in my bag and like trying to answer his questions at the same time and like avoiding eye contact, but also trying to make some eye contact. And he's like wearing a mask and I can only see his eyes, and just the most awkward dentist appointment of my entire life for sure. And then he's like, well, let's go ahead and lay down on the chair. So I had brought with me a fidget toy. Like I had anticipated everything I would need in the moment. So I had my fidget cube, the black one, because it's very small. It fits really well in the palm of your hand, and it's not a flashy color that is going to attract attention. So I had that in my hand to hold on to as like a comfort item. And I had my loops in still. And I kept my sunglasses with me. I put them like this. I was like, I'll keep them with me in case I need them. Because like I said, lately my eyes have been very sensitive to light. I get on the chair and right away I can tell that the lights on the ceiling and the lights that they use, they pull down this thing to light up your mouth so they can look at your teeth and stuff. Right away I'm like, okay, this is gonna hurt my eyes real bad. So I ask him up front, I'm like, do you mind if I wear my sunglasses? And he's like, no, that's fine. But kind of like a little bit taken aback, but also like fine with it. So I said, I'm very sensitive to light, and if you don't mind, I'd prefer wearing them. And so I put my sunglasses on, and it helped, obviously. And I was so proud of myself for speaking up about my needs. And even in a country like France that isn't autism friendly at all, or autism aware in any way, I was so proud of myself that I managed to accommodate my needs without having to say that I'm autistic or having to explain and everything. I just said, I'm sensitive to light. I just described the specific symptom, if you like, and what I need to accommodate it. and I just asked if it was okay because I didn't want it to get in the way of his work, obviously. But since he was fine with it, I just went ahead with it, and it made me feel really confident and empowered that I was able to like speak up and like not let the lights destroy my eyes and say nothing, you know? And so he looks at my teeth, and like it was very quick. He honestly said like, it all looks great. You don't have any like plaque, or like you don't have any tooth decay, like nothing, there's nothing wrong with your teeth, basically, with your mouth. So I was like, yay, I guess I've been doing a good job looking after my teeth, because this past year I put a lot of effort into like establishing a good dental hygiene routine, because it's not that I didn't properly look after my teeth before, I did, but more often than not I would only brush them once a day, and I wouldn't floss, and I would only go to the dentist once every few years. I think the most I went without going to the dentist was like 5 years, which is definitely not recommended. I struggle with personal hygiene and being consistent with that, like a lot of autistic people. But what I struggle even more with is going to the dentist and needing stuff done to my teeth. It reminds me of this movie Kimi that Irene talked about, the thought spot, in her videos. She analyzed the movie over several videos, and in one of them she was talking about how Kimi, the strongly autistic coded main character in the movie, basically has a flawless dental hygiene routine because she can't stand going to the dentist, and so she makes sure that she looks after her teeth so well that she'll never have to go to the dentist. And that's kind of how I feel in a less extreme way, because I still go to the dentist, but my reasoning is I'd rather look after them now than pay the price later on in life by having to like get a lot of repairs done to my teeth. You know, that will cost a lot of money and will be very stressful and potentially painful and traumatic and all that stuff. So this past year I've been putting a lot of effort into like brushing my teeth at least twice a day, and flossing once a day, using an alcohol-free mouthwash and all that stuff. So I was really proud of myself that my efforts paid off. And I was really proud of myself for advocating for my needs as well, for my autistic needs. And so he was like, yeah, it's all good. Like, you can go, like, don't hesitate if you have any questions, blah, blah, blah. And so I left, and I was super happy with myself. And then I joined my partner outside. Every time I get out of the dentist, or like every time I have a successful appointment or anything like that, I feel this sense of like, this huge sense of accomplishment. Oh mon cœur. Oh là là. It was scary, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. While I was filming this video, I saw something like run in front of the window outside, and I got a gut feeling, and I looked out the window, and there was my cat Walt on the roof of the garage, if you will, that is like next to our house. It's the second time he goes on that roof. Last time was last Christmas, like on Christmas Day, he went on the roof and like got really scared and eventually came back, but this time he went further up the roof and he was stuck there and he was meowing, and my partner's upstairs on a phone call, an important phone call, and so I was like, what do I do? And I was just trying to stay calm and like reassure him and be like, come here, I'll catch you. And like, I know he really trusts me, and he seemed really scared, and he was like stuck on the roof, and every time he moved it would slide down, and I was like, do I stay here? Do I go find my partner? Do I go get a ladder of some kind? Like, and eventually he managed to get on the, like, it's an A-frame, like this type of roof, if you will. And so he managed to get on the at the very top, so he could stand up properly and walk along the top of the roof, if you will. And so he walked towards me and managed to jump down onto the balcony from there. And I was like, oh my god, like we had such an intense emotional moment, the two of us, that lasted a few minutes, where I was like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, what if something happens to him and like I have to deal with it on my own and everything? I was so stressed out. Anyway, so that's sorted. He went back into the house and he was like a little bit shook, you know, and so we had a bit of a moment where I cuddled him and he started purring. It's so heartwarming to see how much he trusts us, because he's known us since he was a baby, basically. So anyway, let's go back to the video. So yeah, whenever I have those, I do these appointments and it's like successful, like it goes well or whatever, or just the fact that I've done it, I tend to have this like moment of like where I feel elated, you know, I feel so proud of myself and so satisfied and like, yeah, that I've done it. Then my partner had to go to the post office and to the pharmacy. So in the post office, I just sat down. Honestly, I was so warm because it's been so warm outside lately. So I was sweating like crazy. This whole time that we were out, I had my loops and my headphones in, and for the majority of that time I was listening to ASMR to you know, ground myself and like kind of drown out the noise from people from the outside world. And so I sat down because chronic fatigue and joint pain, that I will get into in another video that I want to make about the suspicions that I have around having hypermobile EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. That's for another video, but basically I sat down in the post office instead of standing up for half an hour in the queue, because that's like really difficult for me to be standing up for a long time. When we were done with that, we went to the pharmacy, and again it took a long time for some reason, and so I sat down again. And yeah, and this whole time I had my headphones on and my sunglasses on, even inside, and I rolled with it. I didn't feel too self-conscious, and most people were indifferent with it. Like, you know, I didn't get any weird looks or anything like that. Nothing that I can't tolerate, you know. So it was great. I felt very happy because I felt like I was really able to accommodate my needs throughout this whole day, afternoon I should say. And then we went to grab some pastries from the bakery to kind of like as a reward. Oh yeah, and we went to a shop as well to like buy some outdoor lights and candles and stuff like that, because they had like a 50% discount because this shop is closing down or whatever. We were queuing in the shop to get our stuff checked out, you know, at the end of our shopping, and just the having to queue, like there was nowhere to sit down for me in that moment, and that was so much for my body to deal with that I was like, I'm glad I was able to sit down at the post office and at the pharmacy, because like I would not be able to deal with this right now. And then we walked home. We usually take an Uber on the way there and then walk home, because the walk back is easier because it goes downhill for the most part. So we walk home, and then honestly, like I felt pretty good. And then about an hour or two later, I was like, the fatigue caught up with me, and I was like, trashed. But honestly, I felt pretty good. And we watched Love is Blind Sweden, which has like the season two of Love is Blind Sweden, and one of the contestants is there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's autistic, even though he didn't say it didn't say it. If you've watched the season, you'll know. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult to watch because she was basically in a relationship with a very neurotypical woman on the show, and she basically kept blaming him for things that have to do with neurodivergence, you know, and even if he isn't autistic at the end of the day, it's still things that we hear all the time that we're constantly stigmatized for in this ableist world of like, you don't have a very expressive face, like flat affect, and same thing with your voice, and like you have difficulty expressing your emotions, and you need time to process stuff, and you get really tired easily in social settings, and you need your alone time, and you need quiet and that kind of stuff, and thriving on routine. Like, these are all things that came up in that season because of that guy, that were like framed as problems or things that she couldn't get over with. She couldn't get over. Like, I'm not blaming her or anything like that. Like, it makes sense for a neurotypical in that situation to not understand because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the language. The problem isn't with that person. The problem is that our society is not more neurodivergent friendly, you know. But it was just heartbreaking because it was such a tragic situation where he was just being autistic and she saw those things as flaws, personal flaws, rejected him for that reason, or encouraged him to mask in some ways. And I was like, I wonder if the outcome would have been better had she known about autism. And even him, I don't know if he, for some reason I'm getting the vibe that he was either diagnosed when he was younger, or he at least suspects in some ways, because some of his language sounded neurodivergent, like sounded like he was aware in some way. Or maybe he's just exceptionally self-aware and has no idea he's autistic. But either way, like, had he been able to use the language and had she known more about it and stuff like that, I feel like their relationship could have been a lot better. And that was kind of hard to watch. It reminded me of stuff, you know, it triggered my trauma in some ways, like being stigmatized for not having the right facial expressions or whatever, feeling like you're never good enough because you struggle in social situations when others don't seem to. It just stirred up a lot of things in me. At one point, my partner and I started talking about how, I don't remember how it started, but we basically ended on the subject of like how my worst fear, basically one of my worst fears in life, is to be invalidated, to feel invalidated. And we started talking about how it controls my whole life and how it's one of the reasons why it's been so difficult for me building my disability benefits application, because one of the reasons why it's been so emotional, so triggering for me to work on that, and why I haven't submitted it yet, even though I would hugely benefit from it, is the fear of being invalidated by a social worker there. How it affects my work on YouTube. The fact that I take people's comments very, very personally and will invest a lot of time and energy into interacting with people on YouTube, on my own videos, but also on other people's videos. And it's just something that takes a lot of space in my head, affects me hugely on an emotional level. Like, I end up censoring myself in my own videos sometimes, or not saying things how I would want to say them, not expressing myself freely, basically, because I'm scared of people's reactions. I'm scared of people invalidating me, basically. And so sometimes I will not talk about a certain thing, or I will not talk about it how I would want to talk about it, because I'm constantly in my head thinking of how it could be interpreted by the people watching, and how to avoid invalidating comments, and how basically I spend a lot of my time trying to avoid the feeling of being invalidated. Like, I had been feeling okay until that point, and then as we had the conversation, I started feeling really, really bad physically and like emotionally, and I was like, whoa, something is happening in here that's really powerful. I'm having a trauma response right now. Like, this is very triggering for me. Like, I was having an emotional flashback. So basically, in PTSD and complex PTSD, you have these things called flashbacks where you feel like you're re-experiencing the traumatic event. And if you have PTSD, it was just one specific event. And then if you have complex PTSD, it means that over a long period of time, over several repeated events, that's what created the trauma. And I have been told by mental health professionals in the past that I have complex PTSD from my childhood. Over the years, I've kind of had moments where I was unsure about that label specifically, because I would read the symptoms of complex PTSD and be like, I don't know if I recognize myself in this. Like, I don't know if I get flashbacks. I don't really know if I avoid triggers, that kind of thing. And the thing is, it's so difficult to pinpoint these things sometimes, recognize them in yourself and be like, oh, that's what it is. Because when you think of PTSD, a lot of the time you think of war veterans, you think of like someone hearing an airplane or a helicopter and re-experiencing a traumatic war event where a helicopter was involved. Do you know what I mean? It seems very like easy to recognize and tangible and stuff. When you have complex PTSD because of the way your parents treated you your whole life, the trauma is very insidious and you're not always aware of it. At least in my experience, I'm not always aware of it, which makes it difficult to deal with it if you're not aware that that's what you're experiencing, And the reason why I had such a strong reaction while talking about it with my partner is because I realized he was right. Sometimes people from the outside can see things clearer than you. And my partner, also being autistic, has pattern recognition as well. And so that's how we've been able to help each other a lot through our healing journey, because we're able to recognize patterns in each other that we wouldn't recognize in ourselves. And so when you started talking about how much effort I put into avoiding being invalidated in my life, it felt so true and it felt so real and it felt so intense, like as if he had put his finger on the nerve, like it hurt really bad because I knew he was right. And I was like, how did I not realize that? Because I know about the symptoms of PTSD, and I'm like, yeah, I regularly have nightmares. Like, I don't have nightmares of the exact things that I experienced, but I have nightmares that are reminiscent of things I experienced, like the feeling of being chased, the feeling of hiding. I often have nightmares where I'm at my parents' house and there's a monster, and I know that monster figure that I need to hide from and run from and that I'm afraid of is my parents. And so I know that these are like trauma nightmares, like PTSD nightmares. But I was like, I don't know, do I really live my life trying to avoid triggers? Like, it used to be more obvious in the past, because avoiding triggers for me would look like avoiding conversations about my parents because they were very emotionally heavy. And now I'm at a point where I can talk about it without it triggering a big emotional response. So I was like, okay, I got over that trigger and basically on all that stuff. And yesterday, while talking to my partner, I was like, I spend my entire life trying to avoid getting invalidated. That's like my biggest trigger. I go to extremes to avoid that, and it haunts me. It's also one of the reasons why I've had a hard time recovering from burnout, which I talked about in my previous video about chronic burnout, because I'm basically in a almost constant trauma response, and that's what keeps my nervous system so dysregulated a lot of the time. I'll make a video about hypermobile ADS, but basically I've started diagnostic process, the thing that has been haunting me the most is, should I bring up my autism? Because even though there's a huge overlap between autism and hypermobile EDS, in France, most professionals don't know shit about autism or have wrong ideas about it and everything. And just the thought of the possibility of having a health professional invalidate my autism or laugh in my face or whatever. It's not just rejection sensitive dysphoria. It reopens a deep wound inside me that's got to do with the way that my mom, especially, the way that she used to humiliate me and like degrade me, directly attack who I was as a person, my identity, my core self, how she used to degrade that and humiliate me in such cruel ways that made, like, my mother made me feel like the worst piece of shit on the entire planet sometimes. That's why I've been struggling with my self-esteem my whole life. Your parents are the ones who are supposed to protect you and make you feel good about yourself and help you build a sense of identity and self-confidence and self-esteem and all that stuff. And when your parents are constantly like putting you down because they have their own stuff that is not resolved or healed, and they take it out on you to make themselves feel better. That's what my parents constantly did, was put me down, hurt me, bully me, essentially, to make themselves feel better. That's what bullies do. My parents were my bullies. Yeah, when your parents do that to you, it's very difficult to build a strong sense of self and be confident and have self-esteem and all that stuff. And so I realized yesterday that was such a profound wound that I have, where like I'll do anything I possibly can to avoid a situation where anything about me and my identity is invalidated in some way. It's like my worst fear, which is why most of the process of building my disability benefits application comes down to asking ChatGPT, well, what if they say that? But what if they don't want to give it to me because they don't know about this aspect of autism? What if they invalidate this? And trying to anticipate every single thing that they could tell me to reject my application, because it wouldn't just be rejecting my application, it would feel like they're rejecting me as a person. And I know it's irrational, right? That's why it's a trauma response, because I know it's irrational, but it's not something that can be reasoned with logically. It doesn't happen in the logical part of the brain. Like I still react to those situations like the child that I was back when my mother would make me feel like a piece of shit. I'm constantly doing everything and anything I can to avoid re-experiencing that. And that's where the complex PTSD comes in, is like, that's my trigger. And that's how I'm constantly trying to avoid the trigger. Or it's one of my triggers, you know? It's like I'm re-experiencing those moments as a child when my mom would make me feel like a piece of shit and it would like hurt me to my core, you know? So yeah, that was a big discovery I made yesterday. In those moments, I am submerged with such negative emotions, like I said, because I'm experiencing a sort of emotional flashback. So it feels really bad physically and emotionally, but at the same time I get this overwhelming sense of relief, almost like I've been walking around with a pebble in my shoe or a splinter in my foot, and I was constantly experiencing pain and I didn't understand where the pain was coming from, and I was trying to find other ways to accommodate the pain, and I finally discovered the pebble in my shoe or the splinter in my foot yesterday, and I was finally able to be like, oh my gosh, yes, like I might struggle to get it out of my foot, but at least I know that's what's been causing the pain now, and I know that that's what I need to focus on. And I feel like that part of my trauma I had been trying to process intellectually, and yesterday for the first time I was able to process it somatically, or like physically, emotionally. I was able to feel the emotions in my body. It was a very powerful experience, and I was like so relieved, because I was like, I'm not gonna heal overnight, obviously, but figuring it out is the first step. It felt right. It was very painful, but it felt right, and I know it's the kind of emotional pain that's necessary for healing, and it's the kind of emotional pain I'm willing to go through in order to heal, because it's just like I don't want to be carrying around that complex PTSD my whole life. I don't know if you can heal completely from complex PTSD, especially from something as insidious as childhood abuse, childhood trauma, but I'll do anything and everything I can to heal from it as much as possible, because I do not want it to control my life anymore. And so yesterday was a big step in that direction. So I'm very happy about that. So that was completely unexpected, and I was like, I'm happy it's happening, but also like I already had like a very like tiring, overstimulating day, so it wasn't the best timing, but you know, that's okay. It's not the only thing keeping me in my burnout, but like my partner was telling me like that I seem to get triggered often, and also in our conversations together, that I often feel invalidated even when he's not invalidating me. And I know he's not invalidating me because my partner's never invalidated me. But again, it's not a rational, logical reaction. It's a traumatic response. Being defensive because I feel like he's invalidating me even when he's not. And it makes him feel like he's got to be careful about the way that he phrases things or his choice of words, and I don't like that, because I don't want him to feel like he has to walk on eggshells. What's the expression? Whatever. I don't want him to feel like he's got to be careful around me, no, so as not to trigger me. You know, I want him to be able to express himself freely, but also I can't help getting those trauma responses. He was like, I think like you're getting triggered on an almost daily basis, either in our conversations or online. Obviously, this constant trauma response contributes to keeping my nervous system in a dysregulated state, because that's what trauma does to you. I think he is spot on, like a lot of the time. Focusing on healing that part of my trauma will help me keep my nervous system in a more regulated state, which in turn will help me get out of chronic burnout faster. It's not a race, obviously, but yeah. So that was a great revelation I had yesterday. And then I went up to my room to open the window to let some fresh air in, because it tends to get really warm up there, because warm air tends to rise or whatever. And I get into the room, and trigger warning for anyone who's got like a phobia of spiders or creepy crawlies of any kind, but I turn on my bedside lamp and I see dozens of tiny little spiders scuttle, like to hide in the darkness. And I look around and I see tiny little spiders everywhere, like on the walls, on my side of the bed, everywhere. And I start, like, I'm not scared of spiders. I don't consider myself as having like a phobia of spiders, but there have been a few times in my life when I've experienced this ick feeling that comes from the feeling of like something that's swarming, you know? Like as a child, one time a mouse died close to my bed, and one night I went to bed and I discovered maggots crawling everywhere. I had this visceral reaction that I had last night with the spiders, where I was like, oh, like, I don't know, it sends shivers down my spine and I get this icky feeling, and I was just like freaking out. And I was telling my partner like, oh my god, there's spiders everywhere in the room. And I love animals and I'm a very empathetic person. If you know me, you know how much effort I put into trying to avoid creatures getting harmed in some way. And whenever it's raining outside, I'll be the one telling you to use your torch on your phone and look at your feet to avoid stepping on snails. And if we find a spider in the house or any other insect, my first instinct isn't to kill it. I always find a way to put it outside. The other day I found a bee and a wasp that were struggling, and I put them on flowers so that they could, like, I will do whatever I can to help creatures, but this felt like a situation that I couldn't handle in any other way, especially with the day that I had just had. Exhausting, overstimulating experience in town, and then coming home and having this huge like trauma, like emotional experience, and that was too much. Like I couldn't deal with it in any other way than disposing of them in some way. And it didn't sit right with me because they're creatures and they are babies in that instance, but there was no other way to deal with it than my partner vacuuming them. Basically, he just went around the room and vacuumed as many as he could find, and then he went outside and emptied the vacuum reservoir, if you will, like into the bin outside. So like I like to think that maybe some of them survived. I don't know. I'm having a hard time being okay with it in my conscience because I know it's wrong, but I couldn't see myself dealing with it in any other way because there were just too many, and they were so fast and like so clever, and like they would hide whenever the light was on. Like it was a whole thing. I took a shower because at this point I was so overwhelmed by everything that had been happening during the day, and I was stressed because I was like, I don't know if I feel capable of spending the night in the room knowing that there are baby spiders that have basically hatched from a nest somewhere in the room. But also I tried sleeping in this room recently because of the heat, and I made a short about it because it threw off my routine, and I felt so bad for a couple days that I was like, you know what, forget it, I'm going back upstairs. Because like, especially when I'm having a difficult day like yesterday, I need my routine and I need my comfort things. And like going into my room at night and doing my little bedtime routine and being in that safe, familiar space is essential for my mental health. And I felt like the whole situation with the spiders last night kind of took that away from me. So suddenly, like, I had a hard day and I felt like I didn't have a safe place to find some comfort at night. And so I was stressing out about it. So I took a shower to kind of calm myself down, also because I had been sweating so much. Then I went back downstairs. I watched a comfort movie to try and bring my, like, ground myself, like recenter myself and take my mind off of everything. And then I went back upstairs and there were more spiders, not as many as the first time around, but still. And so they gave me the feeling of like they're gonna keep hatching from their eggs all night and they're gonna be crawling all over us. And like I was talking with my partner about, I was like, maybe we could move the bed away from the wall, like trying to find ways that would help me relax, because also the spiders seemed to be coming from my side of the bed, which wasn't very reassuring. And eventually we decided that we were not going to change anything. I had this visceral need of everything needs to go back the way it usually is. Everything needs to go back to its rightful place. I need this familiar, safe place, you know, in order to be able to relax and get some rest. So I put everything back exactly the way it was. I was up until 3 a.m. not being able to sleep, constantly checking for spiders all over the room. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, they're so clever. They only come out when the lights are off. I turn off the light and then 10 minutes later I would turn it back on and nothing. And I did that maybe 4 times, waking up my partner in the process, until I was finally confident enough that no new spiders were gonna come out of nowhere or during the night. and I was finally able to fall asleep, and I slept until 11:30 this morning. So that was my day yesterday. Oh my goodness. That was a very intense day for sure. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.